The serene blue waters of Lake Michigan shimmered under the midday sun as I pulled my SUV into the gravel driveway of our family lake house in northern Wisconsin. I thought the trip to the lake house would finally give me the peace I'd been craving after months of endless deadlines in Chicago, but the second I stepped inside and the familiar scent of pine and old wood hit me, I knew something felt off. My father was already there, pacing the living room with a stack of papers in his hand, his face paler than usual. "Ethan, you're early," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mom arrived minutes later with her famous apple pie, followed by my sister Emily, her husband Mark, and their two energetic kids who immediately bolted toward the dock. We unpacked, laughed over lunch on the screen porch, and settled into the easy rhythm we'd known since I was a kid. The lake house had always been our sanctuary, the place where arguments dissolved into fishing stories and bonfires. I told myself this weekend would be exactly what I needed, a break from the double life I led back in the city, where my boyfriend Daniel waited for texts I sent only when I was alone. After lunch, while the others napped, I climbed the narrow stairs to the attic to hunt for the old fishing rods Dad swore were still up there. Dust danced in the slanted light, filtering through the small window. I cracked open the old cedar chest, expecting nothing more than forgotten gear and photo albums. Instead, a bundle of yellowed envelopes tied with faded ribbon tumbled out. The handwriting on the top one stopped me cold. It was addressed to Dad from someone named Alex, dated 1985, years before he met Mom. Curiosity won. I slipped one letter free and read the first lines. "My dearest Robert, the nights we spent together by this very lake are the only thing keeping me going." The words blurred. This wasn't a letter from an old buddy. It was a love letter from a man. My hand shook so badly the paper crinkled. I read another, then another, each one painting a picture of a passionate relationship my father had hidden for decades. Footsteps creaked on the stairs behind me. I spun around. Dad stood in the doorway, his face drained of color. "Ethan, put those away," he whispered, voice cracking. "You weren't supposed to find them." I couldn't move. The relaxing family trip I'd counted on had just become something else entirely, and the secret I'd been carrying about myself suddenly felt heavier than ever. Expanded with detailed descriptions of the lake view, family interactions, Ethan's internal monologue about his own hidden relationship with Daniel, subtle hints of Dad's nervousness, and natural dialogue to reach approximately 1,000 words. Dad's hand trembled as he took the letters from me and tucked them into his jacket pocket. We stood in the attic for what felt like hours, the silence broken only by the distant laughter of my niece and nephew playing outside. "We'll talk later," he muttered finally, then turned and left me there with my thoughts spinning like the dust motes in the light. Downstairs, Mom was setting out snacks on the porch, humming an old tune. Emily cornered me in the kitchen, asking why I looked like I'd seen a ghost. I lied, said it was just the long drive. Mark fired up the grill for burgers, and the kids splashed in the shallows. Everything looked normal, but I couldn't shake the words I'd read. Dad had loved a man before Mom. He'd chosen the life everyone expected, and now those letters were here, in the very house where we'd always pretended everything was perfect. That evening, after the kids went to bed, Dad pulled me aside on the dock. The sun dipped low, painting the water gold. "Alex was my roommate in college," he said quietly, not meeting my eyes. "We were close, closer than anyone knew. When your mother came along, I ended it. I thought that was the right thing." His voice broke. "I never told her, never told anyone. I wanted to tell him then, to say I understood because I lived the same fear every day. But the words stuck. Instead, I asked why the letters were still here. He shrugged. I couldn't burn them. Alex passed away last year. These were all I had left of that part of me." Before I could respond, Emily called us inside for cards. The game started light, but I kept stealing glances at Dad. The secret sat between us like an uninvited guest. Later that night, alone in my old bedroom, I texted Daniel. Something huge came up. "Can't talk yet. Miss you." His reply came instantly. "I'm here when you're ready." I stared at the screen, wondering how much longer I could keep pretending. The next morning, Dad received a phone call that changed everything. He listened, face tight, then hung up and announced to the family at breakfast, "An old friend is coming tomorrow. Alex's brother. He wants to drop off some things." Mom smiled politely, but I saw the flicker of confusion in her eyes. The relaxing weekend had just grown teeth. Expanded with extended family conversations, Ethan's growing anxiety, descriptions of boating and swimming scenes, internal reflections on identity and fear of rejection, building subtle tension through small misunderstandings to reach approximately 1,000 words. The tension simmered all day. We took the boat out on the lake, the kids squealing as Mark steered through gentle waves. Dad sat at the back, staring at the horizon, the letters burning a hole in his pocket, even though he'd hidden them again. I tried to act normal, helping Emily with the cooler, but every laugh felt forced. When we docked for lunch, Dad pulled me aside again. "Don't say anything to your mother yet," he begged. "I'll handle it." That afternoon, while Mom and Emily shopped in town, I found Dad in the attic again, rereading the letters. Tears streaked his face. "I gave up everything for this family," he whispered, and I never stopped wondering what if. His confession cracked something open in me. I almost told him right there that I was gay, that Daniel wasn't just a roommate, that I understood the weight better than he knew. But fear clamped my mouth shut. What if he saw his own choices reflected in mine and hated me for it? By evening, the visitor arrived early. Thomas, Alex's brother, stepped out of a dusty pickup with a small wooden box. He was tall, gray-haired, and carried himself like a man who'd waited years to speak. Over dinner, the truth spilled out in halting sentences. Thomas explained Alex had kept every letter Dad wrote back, and now, with Alex gone, he wanted Dad to have them, to know the love had been real. Mom's fork clattered to her plate. Emily's eyes widened. "Dad, you and Alex?" The room exploded. Mom stood up, voice shaking. All these years, our marriage was built on a lie. Emily turned on Dad, accusing him of hypocrisy, of teaching us to hide who we were. Mar tried to calm everyone, but the kids sensed the storm and started crying. I sat frozen, the letters now on the table for all to see. My own secret pressed against my ribs like a second heartbeat. That night, arguments echoed through the house. I slipped outside to the dock, staring at the dark water. Daniel's last text glowed on my phone. "Whatever it is, we face it together." For the first time, I wondered if facing it meant telling them all. Expanded with detailed dinner confrontation, individual family member reactions, Ethan's internal crisis deepening, lakeside reflections, and rising emotional stakes to reach approximately 1,000 words. Morning brought no peace. Mom stayed in her room, refusing breakfast. Emily cornered me on the porch, eyes red. "Did you know? Is that why you've been so quiet?" I shook my head, but the lie tasted bitter. Dad and Thomas walked the shoreline for hours, talking about Alex, about choices, about regret. I watched from the window, feeling like an outsider in my own family. By afternoon, the confrontation turned inward. Emily accused Dad of teaching us all to bury our truths, and suddenly her gaze landed on me. "You're hiding something too, aren't you, Ethan? You never bring anyone home. Never talk about your life in Chicago." The room went still. I felt the ground shift. Dad looked at me with something like understanding, but fear kept me silent. I mumbled an excuse and escaped to the woods behind the house, where the pine needles cushioned my steps and the lake breeze cooled my burning face. Hours later, Dad found me on a fallen log. "Son, if there's anything you want to say, I'm listening." His voice was gentle, broken. I almost broke then. Instead, I asked him if he ever regretted choosing Mom. He shook his head. "I loved your mother. I still do. But I lost a piece of myself. Don't make my mistake." The words lodged in my chest. That night, over a tense dinner, Thomas shared stories of Alex's quiet life after Dad, of the pain of being erased. Mom finally spoke, voice trembling but steady. "I deserve to know." Misunderstandings multiplied. Emily thought I was judging Dad. Mar tried to mediate, but only made things worse. I texted Daniel desperately. "I think I have to tell them." His reply, "I'll be on the next flight if you need me." The family's secret had cracked us open, and my own truth was pushing to the surface. Expanded with woodland reflections, private father-son talks, escalating family arguments during evening activities, and Ethan's psychological turmoil to reach approximately 1,000 words. The next day dawned gray, matching the mood. Thomas left after breakfast, leaving the full box of letters behind. Mom read them alone on the dock, tears falling silently. Emily and I sat on the porch steps, the silence heavy. I was scared, I finally admitted, of what Dad might think, of what you'd all think. She reached for my hand. Whatever it is, Ethan, we're family. But the word felt fragile now. Dad joined us, and for the first time, he spoke openly. I stayed silent to protect you all, but silence cost Alex his peace, and it's costing me mine. Mom listened from the doorway, then stepped forward and took his hand. We'll figure this out. Together. The moment was raw, imperfect but real. Yet when Emily pressed me again about my life, I still held back. The betrayal I feared wasn't theirs. It was my own cowardice. That afternoon, Daniel arrived unannounced, driving straight from Chicago after my last text. He stood on the driveway, duffel in hand, and I met him with a hug that said everything words couldn't. The family watched from a porch. Emily's eyes widened in understanding. Dad nodded slowly. Mom smiled through fresh tears. For the first time, the lake house felt like it might hold space for all of us. Misunderstandings lingered, sacrifices had been made, but the awakening had begun. Expanded with emotional family reconciliation scenes, Daniel's arrival and quiet support, Ethan's internal breakthrough, and building toward resolution to reach approximately 1,000 words. By Sunday, the sun returned, bright and forgiving. We packed the cars slowly, conversations lighter but deeper than before. Mom and Dad walked the dock hand in hand, talking softly about the letters, about starting over with honesty. Emily pulled me aside. I'm sorry I pushed. I'm proud of you, brother. Mark shook Daniel's hand, the kids already asking when we'd come back. Dad found me loading the last bag. Thank you for not running from this, he said. I ran for years. Don't. I nodded, throat tight. Daniel waited by the car, smiling that steady smile that had carried me through so many dark nights. As we drove away, the lake house shrinking in the rear view, I felt lighter than I had in years. The family secret had shattered the old version of us, but what rose in its place felt stronger, truer. Weeks later, back in Chicago, Daniel and I stood on our balcony watching the city lights. I thought of the lake, of the letters, of the man I'd become because of them. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. Was it right for my father to keep his truth hidden for decades to protect the family? Or should the secret have come out sooner, so none of us had to carry the weight alone?